Here we have Bitcoin to start off the new week. I want to first start off by reiterating the analysis from the past couple days over the weekend, of which we were first looking for a bounce off of the 38,500-ish region right here with targets back up to the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement, which was just below 39,900. We basically hit that over the weekend, and then we said very likely a pullback from there into a continuation move to the downside, in this case, all the way down to the blue box territory, which was the technical target of 37,500 to actually even as low as about 37,100. I still think that one could give another stab a little bit lower, but ultimately the question right now is, are we likely to bounce on Monday or not, especially after getting absolutely fucking shreked over the past over the past week. Anyways, what I would like to do right now is overlay some conditions for a little bit of a short-term bouncy bounce here. In this case, I'm going to go over to our stochastic momentum oscillators on the short-term timeframes, of which we do reference on CME and spot price action as well, but CME a little bit more of an interesting go right here. That 4-hour stochastic momentum will turn back onto the upside with any sort of a closure above 38,450. Currently, Bitcoin trading about $500 below that, which is a sneeze, of course, in Bitcoin terms, but I should be, again, does need to be validated above those regions. And then what I'd be looking for is, of course, our volatility indicators, of which spot price action, again, I don't trust on a Monday, but what I do look at is CME over here, and we can see that HVP representing volatility is actually rather high. So theoretically, we should be looking for contraction phase, and if we're looking for a contraction phase alongside upwards momentum, that's likely to be a corrective move. So corrective within the current context of this, of this trend would be, another likely lower high. So where would that likely come in around? Well, I'd be having the same ranges as what we had over the weekend, actually. Still looking at the 0.5 just below 39.9 as a major pivot, or I wouldn't say a major pivot, but a pivot for the short-term timeframes relevant to even an hourly closure. So an hourly closure above there, and yes, I would be looking for Bitcoin to put in a move somewhere around just above $41,000. So, a little bit more than $1,000 move in this case. And you probably noticed that over the past few days here, especially, these ranges have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And, we've basically just been looking for like, about, a bit of a bit over $1,000 to $2,000 moves, the whole way through. But that's just all that the market's been giving us. So, at the end of the day, this is where I like to reiterate my stance that, the channels and very interesting content creators that are always calling for like a moon or a doom shot. Well, as you can see, while it probably does happen over a long enough period of time, it does require a shit ton of patience and not relevant for the day-to-day traders. Nor is it even, realistically, it doesn't happen all that often. So just kind of want to reiterate that stance simply because it's just unrealistic in my opinion. And it does seem like a lot of people are starting to catch on now that is not just irresponsible, but also just, maybe they do actually believe it. Who the hell knows? Anyways, I should get off that topic because it's not appropriate for me to speak about. I want to be speaking about actual price action, not about other bullshit. Anyways, let's go over and check out the 6-hour time frame, as we do see it will turn up as well above 39,600. So that would obviously be met if we did see the hourly close above that 39, that short-term pivot, which was 39,900 actually right here. So if that is met, we very likely do see another move up somewhere around about 41 to 41,500. In fact, I'll put a nice little blue box right here. But again, remember, this is all contingent upon validation above 39,900 on an hourly closure, nothing less in this case. And short term, we don't even have a validation of a bounce in progress until we do start to see these lower term time frame momentum also to start to turn around. And again, it would just be a corrective signal first and foremost, simply because we do see that volatility is very likely going to enter into a contraction phase. Other than that, the other lower term timeframes I imagine are probably on the same tip. Yes, indeed, they are. 3-hour stochastic momentum will be turning up with any sort of a closure above 38,100, and hourly is going to be showing what? Is going to be showing this about the same thing, 37,750. You'll notice that all these lower term timeframes are coming in from the same area. They're all showing corrective signals, but they are all, within striking distance of showing some upside momentum. So I do suspect that we're probably in for a bounce, today, tomorrow, if you will, around the time that US markets open. And then the question is, does the bounce basically get above 39,900? If it does, I would extend targets quite a fair bit. Until then, what would be a target for this bounce? I don't really have a specific one. At minimum, $39,000 I would suspect, but probably looking somewhere more between about 39,100 and 39,500. Again, this is only relevant for the short-term timeframes. But as we get into the higher-term timeframes now, the picture becomes a lot more devastating, if you will. And so I'm going to start it off with the daily right here. We're about to see the daily stochastic momentum cross to the downside and also reject the bullish control zone with any sort of a daily closure today below 40,800, which is, well, currently almost $3,000 away from current price action. By the way, spot price action has certainly already done around this and is showing 44,200 as the magical number in comparison to CME. Again, I do trust CME over spot price action, especially, you know, on Monday and Tuesdays. And then the other big piece of price action that we were looking over the last 24 hours was, of course, the 5-day closure, which happened last night. And the 5-day closure on spot price action in this case did officially cross to the downside and will be remaining with downside momentum as long as Bitcoin is below 39,600. So you can see a lot of things pivoted around that mid $39,000 region. So I would feel comfortable in saying that as long as Bitcoin's below there, you know, it is a little bit more wise to be looking for, well, continuation of our overall trend and, you know, being generally looking for those lower highs, even on the lower term time frame. So you could see that you could have a lower term time frame rally into what would just be another lower high, and then higher term time frame continuation if that, you know, assuming that that does continue from here. Anyways, I want to now overlay some conditions for some Hopium and some Doomium. In this case, I want to reference the chart that we put out yesterday, I believe it was. Yeah, it's right here. This would be the Hopium chart from yesterday, and it is still actually valid. Well, it's not that it's valid, it is not invalidated, and it still awaits actual full-on validation. But the Hopium, as I see it right now, is still looking at Bitcoin as putting in a slew of higher lows. In fact, not a slew, but 2 higher lows right here, and the same highs right here at about 45,000 bucks. These higher lows are coming in along a trend line, which would currently be coming in around just below $37,000. So we could very easily see a downside continuation somewhere, move somewhere down around there. But assuming, or as long as Bitcoin is not closing daily dildos below there, thus breaking that last higher low, I would be looking at this as, I suppose, still an idea that is a possibility and probably what the Boo laws are looking for right now. Again, the same validation conditions for upside continuation, major upside continuation, are the same shit as what we've been looking at since basically mid-January right here. That $45,000 level on a 4-hour closure, nothing fucking less, or a daily above $44,500 would do it for me, and that would imply a very big move based off of this as a reaccumulation formation on the lows to, you know, the mid $50,000 territories. In fact, $55,000 to $56,000. Of course, there's going to be stops along the way, you know, no shit. But ultimately, in the following weeks, I would be looking for a move like that to transpire, assuming that you did validate above, you know, above this region. Is it that relevant for price action right now? No, it's very far away from price action right now. But basically, what you would expect if this is going to have some sort of validity is you'd expect probably at least one more test like this to the downside, giving it at least one more higher low, and then Bitcoin, you know, trudges its way up, and then of course clears above this region, thus validating the move, and well, major targets to the upside. By the same token, if Bitcoin does come back down and of course take out the last higher low, in this case, where would that really start to be, you know, validated as far as major downside continuation? I would say below about 36,000 bucks, even on a medium-term time frame, would very likely do it for me. Then, well, I am looking for big bad moves down, very likely to the macro range lows. In this case, it's going to be, do I have a chart over here? No, where's my damn charts? Where's my damn charts? It's only Hopium for right now. God damn it. Anyways, we can just do it right here. This is fair enough. And the macro range lows, of course, between about 29 and 30,000 bucks. And that's kind of where I'd be looking for, you know, if that trigger were to be met. Until then, you can look at this price action right here as still potentially even setting in a higher low on the weekly, although it is, you know, certainly in limbo right now. And again, it would be completely invalidated with any sort of a move back down below that last prior low. So until then, you know, short-term timeframes are probably the most relevant, at least in my opinion, just because they're a little bit easier right now. And the easy trades, at least in my opinion, for the long term are above 45,000 bucks or below about 36 in this case. Below 36, I'm looking for a move in the following weeks down to the macro range lows. Above 45, I'm basically looking for a move somewhere around mid $55,000 to $56,000 and probably continuation from there. Now, I do want to bring this up as well on the worst case scenario, in my opinion. So I've been focusing on this chart for about 3 months now, and it's still, you know, it's still there. It is a monthly after all, and you know, these things take a long time to be resolved. But ultimately, the signals that I'm looking at, and this would be sort of my worst case scenario for now, would be the monthly MACD mediated by the PMAR and then the white 20 simple, of which I'll go over the signal yet again. And what is it right here? We see the monthly MACD crossing the downside 4 times in Bitcoin's history. One, the most current one, obviously happening in January to February, but the 3 prior times, do have a pretty well documented historical signal. This would be then mediated by the PMR, which has less iterations to be fair, but just the PMR getting below the moving average, that sort of solidifies that signal as okay. This is very likely going to have a catastrophic fall. And then the most relevant for sort of initiating that major downside move in like a timing aspect would be with the monthly closing specifically below the white 20 simple on this chart, which you can see right here in 2014, you can see right here in 2018, you can see right here in 2020. So the green vertical bars correlate to the MACD monthly cross to the downside. Then it's the white 20 simple that once it's closed below, well, downside does emerge from there. So I'll just briefly show you this one over here. You can see that from the 20 simple down to the 55,000, or sorry, down to the 55 EMA did happen, did start to get a lot more, what's it called? Aggressive on that move once that criteria was ticked off. Same thing over here in 2018, closes ever so slightly below it in October, and then the next couple months, Bitcoin finds its lows. Same thing over here in 2020 off of the Rona dump. Anyways, in this case right now, we do obviously have the monthly MACD crossing the downside, and we do have the monthly PMR below the moving average. So those 2 ones are already in place. And the last one that I'm essentially waiting for, if this is going to happen, essentially validating the signal, would be the monthly closing below the white 20 simple right here, which is, by the way, at 38,500 or so. It's obviously a long month left to go, but I would imagine that if we did hit the downside validation conditions for even the daily below about $36,000, that very likely bleeds into a time frame very likely bleeds into a signal like this on a time frame like this. First, targeting the macro cycle lows, in the following week or two, whatever it might end up being. And then, well, historically speaking, Bitcoin has always found its lows around the 55 after that, which right now is just below $24,000. So again, I do think that worst case scenario, at least as of right now, I would only feel comfortable calling a move down there. And it probably doesn't happen overnight again as well. Probably going to take some time, most importantly, but understand that a lot of the people who are looking for moves to like 3,000, 10,000, 15,000, whatever the fuck it might be, I don't think that that's technically relevant right now. That's like the same shit as someone calling for $200,000 based off of very, very little on Bitcoin or whatever the fuck chart that you're looking at. Now, I do want to give a little bit of short, well, I'll just show this chart over here because I do think that it is relevant, but well, it's relevant. Anyways, this is Dixie. This is the dollar index. And I want to first address something that I think a lot of people get wrong on this, which is essentially they think like the Dixie has a directly inverse relationship with Bitcoin or all other assets. That's just simply not true. Dixie is the dollar's value relative to a basket of other fiat currencies. So it's not a direct relationship, although they typically do have some carryover. But anyways, with that in mind, we do see that Dixie is basically getting up to, where you would be expecting a bit of a pullback. Now, here is the very careful consideration to be having on a chart like this. This chart is fucking bullish long term, very fucking bullish long term, of which we've been very bullish on it, especially coming in from September of last year. You can see that it moves at a snail's pace, moves like fucking molasses over here, but ultimately, it does play rather technically. And while I would be expecting pullbacks from basically like the $99.50 to $100 region, that would imply that, short term, we probably get one more continuation drive here. Maybe we're kind of already around that region already. I mean, it did get up to 99.25. So, it's close enough, whatever it might be, probably one more run here. But ultimately, I would be looking for a pullback from that region on the next test, and then the one after that, that's the one that probably does have a high probability to break, and that's going to have major targets to the upside on a continuation drive towards, well, we'll talk about that when we get there, but probably somewhere around about a $1.07 to a $1.08 region long term. Until then, what does that essentially mean for Bitcoin? Well, in a pullback, theoretically, you probably would be looking for a bit of a rebound on Bitcoin. But because this one does show long-term bullishness right here, especially as long as you're above like, your low 90s, I would say that pullbacks are not the same thing as reversals, or a reminder that pullbacks are not the same thing as reversals. And the second that this one does close a monthly above 100.25, I'm looking for major continuation. Major continuation in this technical formation in the format of an ascending triangle would have its own own measured move, actually even higher than what I was suggesting before at about $1.09.5 to $1.10. So, you know, that would be indicative of a few things going on in this world, which is actually a very interesting thing that you can look at because that you can understand, you know, coinciding with the news, right? So the news cycle right now, if you're watching this video at a later date or wherever it might be, is, you know, we got the Ukraine-Russia thing going on. I don't know too much about it. You know, I read the propaganda on both sides. I don't claim to be an expert on the situation, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get into a fucking discussion about this because I'm just not qualified to speak on it. However, when it comes to charts, this would suggest that, well, shit might very well be getting real. Anyways, we can also look at the euro dollar, for example, as well, which I think was also on like a major area tier 2. Yes, indeed it was. And you can see, you know, this is long-term, obviously bearish. Do I have a longer-term chart on this one? I should have, maybe not on OANDA, maybe on this one right here. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. You know, you can see that long term, this very likely is bearish, but are we getting into a bounce area right here? Probably yes. So maybe short term, there's, I don't know, some P stocks or something, and then maybe all hell breaks loose after that. Who knows? But ultimately, you know, I do want to present a more positive vibe with that because, you know, why might as well, you know, hopefully it can help in some way. But I would say that the charts do suggest that, you know, shit very likely does get real here. Just like Bitcoin, you know, below $45,000, hard to be long-term bullish on it. Same thing for euro dollar at $1.25 if you happen to be interested in that. By the way, I'm actually quite happy about this because, well, I bought a house here in Finland. Hopefully Russia doesn't invade, and before they don't invade, hopefully that comes down a little bit lower, so my dollar's worth a little bit more. Hey, that's a selfish endeavor. Apologies on that, man. Just having a bad joke, okay? All right. Anyways, I think that does it for Bitcoin, although we didn't really talk too much about Bitcoin there. I do want to bring up this chart again, the global open interest. Look, if Bitcoin does have a washout move to the downside, I want to be very specifically aware of when the global open interest is below 9 billion, somewhere between about 9 billion and 8 billion. You can set alerts for yourself on this data as well in the Krown Trading application. It is actually free, and you can find a link in the description below. And the reason why I'd want to know if and when that does happen, not saying that it's gonna definitely happen, but if it did happen, is I look at that as a major reset down to prior historical levels and probably going to be at minimum big bounce area. If it does come with downside price action, probably gonna be a move towards about $20,000 or not $20,000, $30,000 on Bitcoin, you know, before that next bounce, and then I want to come back to it after that. On top of that, we do see that funding rates are, you know, still negative in comparison to yesterday. Not anything like too, you know, extreme here. So I wouldn't make any major calls off of that. I'm looking for, you know, about 100 times this number is when that starts to become a lot more concerning. Same thing on the daily feed here as well. And if we go into the market data tab, you know, I do think that it is worth calling out that the fear and greed index is still, you know, within the extremely fearful zone, but ultimately, it's just been really interesting to me to see that sentiment has gotten this asset almost perfectly. Anytime that Bitcoin's gotten to neutral sentiment at around 50, those have been your lower highs for the last couple months here. And anytime that we've gotten, you know, very, very low, those have been actually correlated quite well with the lows. But the problem is, you know, when is it extreme? Well, I would say below 10. Below a 10 read would be extreme. So you can also set alerts for that on the Krown Chain application if you so desire. But other than that, I'm not really making too much out of this data. It's all about price action to me today, so, or typically. Anyways, I think I'll leave it right there. Hopefully that was helpful for Bitcoin, and there you go, sirs and zers.